If you would all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Randy.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Jared, we need a roll call.
Barb Barker.
Here.
Tammy Blank.
Here.
Cinda Brode.
Tom Harley's here.
Cinda Brode.
I'm here. Sorry.
Julia Tamarki Kukuro.
Present.
Mr. Kerr.
Present.
Mrs. Leeper. Mrs. Lowry.
Present.
Mr. Schroth.
Here. Okay, I think that completes the roll call. Good evening, everyone. We want to welcome our visitors to another meeting in virtual reality here tonight. And we thank you all for spending your time with us this evening. I do not have a board president message. Do we have anybody that signed up for public comment, Jared?
We do not, sir.
Okay, no public comment. Is there anybody from IAEA or ASME on the line tonight? Nothing heard. How about SGA or Stuka? Nothing heard again. Superintendent's report. Mike, you're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll make my comments brief. The one thing I do want to let the public know is at the Policy and Personnel Committee, we looked at our procedures for getting the student belongings back to them by the end of the year. So in the next several days, you'll see some correspondence on our social media as well as an email sent to our families about when those pickup days will be per school. And we give a lot of latitude by including multiple days and the ability for parents to call us in one-on-one and get those items. So in the next several days, again, you'll see an email coming from the district that explains that to families so they know how they can plan on their end to get their kids' belongings. And additionally, Mr. President, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone working well together, meaning the board, the administration, the teachers, all the different groups to make our continuity of ed plan work. And we appreciate all the hard support of our teachers, but most importantly, of our families. And we're going to keep moving forward. I viewed the Senate hearing today online to see what plans are coming out next year. And at this point, we're still up in the air. We're going to defer and wait and see what the science, the data says, as well as the governmental regulations that we have above us at the state and federal level, see where we go. And I want to assure the public we're continuously monitoring it and working on different scenarios so we're prepared in the fall, considering the circumstances and conditions we'll be working within, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Ron, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. President and Board of Directors. Again, I'll also be brief. I just wanted to give an update on House Bill 360. That House bill was the one that extended the FBI fingerprints due to the shutdown. Most of the departments were shut down. What that does is it gives the ability for anyone who would need their FBI clearance renewed, not a new one, but renewed. They could do an affidavit, and they would have until December 31st to be able to get their FBI fingerprints in. Now, that's the worst case scenario. But if we move to green and everything opens back up where they are able to get their fingerprints, then they would be asked to do that more expediently. But again, the affidavit is the key to that response. The one thing I do want to share is that was signed. That was House Bill 360, and it was signed by the governor on May 8th, last Friday it was signed. So again, gives the ability that was needed, but that's only for the FBI fingerprints. That's not for the other two clearances, which you are able to get online. There is no waiver period. Those still must be renewed within the 5-year time frame. With that said, that's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ron. There are no presentations this evening. May I have a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we're going to vote in the negative here. Any objections to the minutes or the agenda for this evening? Nothing heard. I'll assume then it was unanimous vote by the board. Next are our board reports. Indiana Technology Center, Uta, you're up.
Okay, the ICTC had a brief virtual meeting on Tuesday, April the 28th. Items that were covered included updates from 4 of the member schools on the budget and how their individual boards voted. All of those boards voted in the affirmative. They accepted a supplemental equipment grant in the amount of $38,743.55. There were updates made to the adult education catalog and the enrollment agreement for adult ed. And they had a second reading and adopted the fund balance policy 620, and then just gave an update on their COVID-19 operations and how they've been doing through this pandemic. And the meeting ended at 12:35.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Uta. Aaron, IU28. Barb, it's your turn.
We have not had a meeting.
Okay, that was quick. Thank you. Tom, you're up. Academic and extracurricular.
We did have a meeting, and we went over 2.5 hours or so, covered a lot of ground. I'll be very brief as I go through these. We have several motions on the agenda for us to approve for the board to look at. So we talked about summer school staff. The administration went over how they were planning on doing it. There's been some staff changes, and we are anxious to get that started so that we can hit the ground running for summer school. They talked about the Chromebook order, and they're going to order just replacement Chromebooks, no additional ones. They feel that they're in pretty good shape for that. We had the targeted school improvement. Mr. McElwain talked about what they were doing to improve that. We're deficient in a very small segment of our student population, and they're focusing on bringing that grade up. There was a Act 80 Day on May 8th that doesn't make much sense the way it was on the calendar, so the administration talked about modifying it, and I believe that's moved forward. We also talked about flexible instructional days, and trying to follow the letter of the requirements for instructional days, and Mike's bringing that forward. We talked about refunding the spring pay to participate fees, and how to do that. The committee was supporting to refund those as quickly as possible. I believe Jared is beginning to has that ready to go. We talked about non-agenda items were the continuity of education plan, what might be happening. We're basing the grades on 3 quarters. We're still attempting to educate children. We had a continuity of education plan parent study, which was very interesting. In spite of all the chaos and everything's been happening for the last few months, the parents were surprisingly pleased with what we were attempting to do, and the results were pretty universal across the board. I assume, Mike, that's posted somewhere. It was very enlightening, and I think kudos to the administration and faculty for having such positive responses in this time that we're in now. We talked about the 2021 school year, planning various to meet various scenarios and kind of an overview. The administration will be focusing on that as we go through. We were looking at, there's a $25,000 grant from United Way to fund the summer reading and math extended school year program. And we discussed how that was going to be deployed and how far that would go. We also discussed the literacy interns and the IUP partnership, encouraged the administration to keep pursuing that. Very excited about keeping that alive. Talked about the instructional time and the periods per day, and also talked about what was going on in the pre-K kindergarten registrations that we're taking now. Had updates from the principals, the elementary, junior high, and senior high, and just in summary, I'm continually amazed at how much we are attempting to do and how much the administration and the faculty are getting done and how well it's being received by our community. So moving on then to the motions. Randy, I can't see anything past 6.4. Is there anything past 6.4? Oh boy. Okay, so
Tom, your
Tom,
agenda items
You're really
are
on,
5.
I'm sorry.
Just
There we go. I didn't recognize any of those, Uta. So we got 5.1 and 5.4. Randy, is there anything on page 3?
Yes, Mr. Hart, I believe there's a 5.5 that would fall within your
Okay. Does anybody wish to pull any of these out for further discussion, or can I take them all? So I'll move that's 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. And Mike, you say there's a 5.5?
Yes, that's the pay to play refund, sir.
Pay to participate.
Yep.
And 5.5 are approved as submitted to the board.
Second.
Any discussion?
okay. It's been moved and seconded, and as Tom's asking, any discussion from the board members?
No.
I have
The only request I have.
Go ahead,
is
Terry.
That either, someone from the administration explain the purchase of the Chromebooks.
Sure, Mr. President, would you like us to take that? We have.
He was kind of. Terry was broken up.
Yeah, I heard him, Mr. President. He asked us if we can explain the Chromebook purchases. So I'll defer anyone want to add in, but a quick conversation that we had at the academic meeting was using funds out of this year's budget to pay for next year's one-to-one initiative at the high school. So we're looking to order enough, not only for the kids who are coming in incoming freshman class, but we did put an extra buffer of a few Chromebooks in there, depending upon what happens next year. So really, this is supporting our one-to-one initiative that we've had in place for years. We're just asking to use funds from this year's budget to buy them rather than next year's budget. And then we will not use next year's budget allocated amount for the Chromebooks. Randy, Jared, anything you want to add to that?
The only thing I would like to add is the reason why we're doing this is because in light of everything going on right now, Chromebooks have become a high demand item, and we would like to ensure by ordering now that we have Chromebooks available for our students at the beginning of the next school year. We don't want to be in a position where we don't have those available and students can't have them. So we're just trying to get ahead a little bit, and the way we need to do that is by using this year's money.
And thank you. I was aware of that. I attended Tom's committee meeting, but I just wanted the public and everybody else to hear why we were purchasing them now. Thanks.
Yep, and that's all. I don't have anything to
Are
add.
there any other
Jared, thank you.
questions? Any other questions, comments from the board on these items? I have one quick explanation that I would like to ask either Mike or Rob, and for the benefit of the public and the press, can you tell us a short version of what flexible instructional days actually are, please?
Sure. Yes, sir. PDE last year made available flexible instructional days where school districts can apply to do remote learning up to 5 days. We did not apply last year for a couple of various reasons that we discussed at previous committee meetings. Why am I applying for this year is because I don't know where we're going to be come the fall regarding the pandemic. And we want to make sure we have different things at our disposal, different options at our disposal if we so choose to use them. Quite frankly, I don't know if we need them because I think a lot of what we do is going to be dictated by the governor and the Pennsylvania Department of Education. But at this point, I find it to be worthwhile to at least apply, have them in case we do need them at a local level where you have some local control and local and decision making. That way they're there and they're ready to go. I think what this year has shown is our teachers are up to the task as well as our administration to make flexible instructional days work. So I'm simply applying it in case we need them. We have them. Again, I can't convince you and tell you it's necessary, but I rather have them and at our use if we so need you to use them, sir.
But there's also a technical issue here, Mike. I think that these actually count for instructional days and can be used for course credit application. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. We're not going to use these flippantly, like if it's just a bad snow day. We want to be smart about how we use these and when to use these. But yes, they count as a school day. That's absolutely correct, sir.
Okay, are there any other questions, comments, or further discussion on 5.2 through 5.5? Okay, nothing heard. We'll again vote on these in the negative. Is there anybody who objects to passing these 5 or 4 motions? Nothing heard, then we will assume that it passes unanimously with everybody in favor. Uta, it looks like you've got the lion's share of motions tonight. Policy and Personnel Committee, it's your turn.
All right, Policy and Personnel Committee met at 5:30 this evening. Much of what we discussed during our meeting is on the agenda this evening. In addition to that, we did get overviews from the principals at the high school, the junior high, the 4-5 buildings and the elementaries about how they're planning on arranging for students, families to return school district property and to retrieve personal property that was left in the buildings when we had to close and go to online learning. And the plans are well thought out. As Mike indicated, Mr. Vukovic indicated that we will be communicating this out to families and offering a pretty wide time period for the pickup and drop off of those materials. The other things we talked about are on the agenda with the exception of 6.7 and 6.8. Those are routine items to have a school district physician and school dentists. And then we'll need to have some discussion on 6.9 because we'll need some volunteers for delegates. Can we take 6.2 through 6.8 and 6.10 all at once as a motion? Or does somebody want to pull any of those out?
Go ahead
Okay,
with it.
then I move that we approve 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, and 6.10 as written.
I second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. We have any questions, comments, or discussion by the board on any of these motions?
Could we have the, maybe Jared explain about the school physician and the dentist, since I did have a question about whether or not we should be even making that agreement now, depending on how school goes in the fall? and how flexible the agreement is?
Sure. Those two they're a typical routine item that we do every year, but what they are used for is really for consultation purposes for our nurses who are maybe seeing students who they have questions about and need to seek the advice of a physician or a dentist. There is really no formal agreement with either one of those, no signed agreements. We just reach out to them every year to make sure they're still willing to be that contact person. So if we don't need them, we don't use them. And the school district, depending on how we come back in the fall, if they're not necessary, then we just would not pay the monthly bill for it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or discussion?
I'd
Again,
just
we'll
like
vote in
to
the
say
negative. Is there anybody that objects to any of those motions?
Terry was trying to say
Walter, I think
something.
Terry had a comment.
I'd just like to finish up by saying I think the administration did a nice job on the positions that we're not going to fill. So appreciate that evaluation and effort. So.
Yeah, Terry, I certainly agree with that. And again, the whole situation is very fluid, and until we get some better idea where we're headed in the fall, we just need to maintain that flexibility. Okay, so all those in favor in voting for 6.2 through 6.8 and 6.10, again, we'll vote in the negative. Anybody object to those? Nothing heard. The chair will assume then that everybody approved and those motions passed unanimously. Okay, 6.9, Uta.
Okay, we need 3 individuals to appoint as voting delegates for the PSBA Delegate Assembly, which will be held virtually on Saturday, November the 7th at 9 a.m.
Is it definite that
You can
it's
put my name.
virtual?
Yeah, I didn't make it last year. You can put me down. Hopefully I can make it.
I can make it.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Okay, I think you have your 3 then, Uta.
Yep.
Oh, so we don't have to vote. Okay.
We do.
Julia, myself, and Tam.
So the motion will read that the board appoint Walter Schroth, Julia Tremarchi-Kukaro, and Tammy Blank as the Indiana Area School District Board of Directors voting delegates for the 2020 Delegate Assembly. The meeting will be held on Saturday, November 2nd at 9 a.m. at the Mountain View Middle School, Cumberland Valley School District, or via Zoom.
I think that's November 7th.
Yeah, November 7th. I'm sorry, I may have misspoken. It is November the 7th.
Second. Walter, I seconded
Okay,
it.
it's moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. Julia seconded. Again, we'll vote in the negative. Anybody objecting? Anybody objecting to these? Okay, the chair will assume that no objections have passed unanimously. Terry, I think you have the shortest agenda tonight, buildings and grounds.
I have nothing to report tonight. I provided my comments from our last meeting. Thanks.
Okay, but I do want to put a plug in for, I believe you're going to be up next week with your committee, which we'll announce at the end of the meeting. Julia, your turn. It's audit and finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did not have a meeting tonight. However, in my last committee, my report to the board, the last meeting, we sort of teed up the ball for the motions that are coming on tonight. I think most of them are, I can't see my whole, could you move it more? Yeah, okay. Okay. Oh, by the way, I can just be an alternate to that convention. I don't have to necessarily be on Uta's motion. I'm going to take an opportunity to amend that now. So Uta, you can make it with that. So 8 motions, these are important motions, however, every single one of them, particularly motion 8.5, which I'd like to take separately. But motion 8.2, 8.3, the appointment of the treasurer, and 8.3, designation of depositories, I think we can take together unless somebody has an objection. Okay, so I'm going to move that motion 8.2, approval of bills, 8.3, appointment of treasurer, and 8.4, the designations of depositories be approved by this body.
Second.
Is there any questions or comments for the administration?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to take.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Walter.
That's okay, Jewel. Just asking, moved and seconded on 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. Do we have any questions, comments, or further discussion by the board members? Okay, nothing heard. We'll again take a vote on these in the negative. If you object to passing any of these motions, please say nay at this time. Okay, the chair assumes then that those motions will pass unanimously and that all board members will approve. All right, Julia, 8.5.
I have to wait till my screen's blurry. Okay. I'm going to make this motion, and I know I'll have some comments, and I know that the administration has something to say on this. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that the vote on the millage rate for the 2021 fiscal year is scheduled with the final budget adoption at the June 22nd, 2020 school board meeting. The millage rate for the tentative budget that has expenditures exceeding $3,044,015, I can't quite read that, I'm sorry, is a 0% increase. That the board adopts a tentative budget for the school year ending June 30th, 2020 in the amount of $56,566,257 as presented. That it be made available for inspection prior to the final adoption at the special meeting to be held on June 22nd, 2020, and that the necessary advertisement concerning adoption of the same be authorized.
Second.
I have a question, Julia.
Okay.
Shouldn't the tentative
Go ahead,
budget, shouldn't the tentative budget be for the school year ending June 30th of 2021?
I can't read this very well. Jared, what does that say? It says 2020. It's so tiny, and I have my glasses on. I think it says 2020, doesn't it, Jared?
It does say 2020, and you're right.
Thank you.
It should say 2021.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Thank you. So whoever made that print larger, I appreciate it. I was going to, okay. Now I wanted to say, oh, Walter, you had something to say next. Go ahead. Okay.
No, actually, Uta covered it. I just wanted to point out that I thought the date might be an error.
Okay, I'd like to make a few comments and then go first with a few comments about this very important motion. It is a tentative budget motion, and we have put it in at a 0% increase, which has been the habit of this board for the past several years. The board has shown no inclination to change that at this time, although that in no way means that there would not necessarily be a tax increase. However, we do know that we're in undocumented territory at this point, and we are expecting a larger deficit, as you can see, than we have previously encountered. And the board has been hard at work, and we've asked the administration at the last budget audit and budget committee meeting to audit and finance meeting to come forward with a plan for or a series of plans for expenditure reductions. I think so far they've made a good stab at it, and I'd like to turn the meeting, this portion of my presentation, over to Mr. Vukovic and Mr. Cronauer for further comments on that task that we've assigned them.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, and I just want to applaud you and the entire board for really taking a good hard look and pushing us to be really careful how we do things. This pandemic has really shaken a lot of school districts, not only in our area and in the Commonwealth, but the nation. So over the next several meetings, what you're going to see is a lot of different options and availability for us to really take this seriously and provide you with a plan that allows us greater flexibility to move forward in efforts to decreasing the deficit. That's our ultimate goal. And right next to it is maintaining our programming. I think we have a plan moving forward over the next several meetings in which we'll do that. An example tonight, you saw some of that, where we're discontinuing 2 positions that allow free up some additional revenues. And there's going to be an addendum following this motion here, where it's also going to show and give us some greater flexibility. And as we talked about in the academic committee meeting, you're going to take a hard consideration and look at our incredible teachers now teaching additional periods a day and be able to maintain this and get through this, and we will. And I think right now what we need to do is be calm and confident and make sure we maintain our programming as well as maximizing our efficiency. And that's exactly what we're going to do with the 2 principles of being flexible and compassionate as we move forward. And you have to applaud yourself, because when you look at their general fund reserves, you have over the 8% requirement or suggested requirement that's boards should have in their general fund. So we planned well. We were fiscally responsible, and we're going to do a combination of revenue reduction strategies as well as a combination of using some of the general fund to help us mitigate this terrible time that all schools are going through. And we are going to be reflective and see where we are within the Commonwealth and the nation about what happens in the fall. And you have other mechanisms and measures available to you. If school's not canceled, then you're looking at extracurriculars not being around, and there's savings there. And we're going to see what happens with the state as they move forward and they make their decisions, and we'll respond accordingly and manage that together. So we thought we've done a great job, I think, coming up with some additional revenue reductions. Again, you voted on 2 already under policy and personnel. There's going to be an addendum that follows that gives us some greater flexibility. And I just applaud you as well as everyone working together, really try to come up with a way just for a terrible time to make sure that this our programming, what defines Indiana, the incredible offerings we have to our kids, that we're doing it while maintaining our efficiencies. And that's exactly what we're going to do, Madam Vice President. So you'll see it over the next several meetings. Tonight we started that process, and we'll continue to do the work as we have a long road ahead of us. But I'm confident with the leadership that the board provides, we have the right people in place to hopefully mitigate some of the damages of the pandemic to the best of our ability. And we're looking at everything. Like you said, we have been and we'll continue to do that. And what we're going to do, what's guiding our decision making, is the best interest of the kids, and we'll keep that at heart. Mr. Cronauer, anything you'd like to add briefly?
Yes, I think you summed it up pretty good, Mr. Vukovic. The only thing I'd like to add is there's still a lot of unknowns, even at the state level, as far as funding as to what the school district may receive next year. And also at the federal level, there could be some federal funding that comes to us that we're not quite sure exactly how we are allowed to use it, where, how to budget for it. So it's still not in there either. There are just things that hopefully over the next month and a half till we have to finally approve a budget on June 22nd that we'll have some more clarification on by then that may help this budget deficit. But I also think it's important to point out that whatever we pass the budget on June 22nd, whatever the deficit looks like, that's not the end of our work. We're going to continue even before next school year to start planning ways as to how we can at that point cut expenditures to work all through next year to close that deficit and hopefully come in with our expenditures even closer to our revenues at the end of the 2021 school year. So it's going to be a work in progress, that budget deficit, all through next year as well, as long as within the next couple months, that time period plus all of next year.
Mike.
Sorry about that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to add and emphasize that the pandemic is causing a lot of uncertainty, not only at the state level and federal level, as Jared mentioned, but also at the local level as to what the actual amount of taxes, whether they're earned income or property, that we'll actually collect. And that's what's driving this board to take the position that we need to, watch every dollar that we're spending at this time because of that uncertainty.
Thanks, Mr. President. We had talked about perhaps having a budget workshop this week, but we've decided to, I want the board to know we've decided to try to schedule something next week, and that'll give us an additional time to start to fill in some of these variables. There's so much, as you said, we don't know about. We're not sure about extracurriculars, how to use social distance in athletics. Where will the state budget end up? But I think we're going to do this, fairly, and we're, as I said, we actually are looking at everything. So the public needs to stay tuned. But this motion is plugged in at a 0% tax increase, and that doesn't mean that it will remain that way. We're going to be very disciplined about being fair to all the stakeholders in the district. I guess we're ready to vote.
Well, I keep trying to hit the speaker and it keeps going away.
I know mine was doing it too. Excuse me.
Yes, Julie, I think at this point in time, I'll ask for additional comments, questions, or input from the board of directors on the tentative budget adoption.
I have no problem.
Okay, nothing heard. Thanks, Tammy. Nothing heard at this point. Jared, I would like to take this as a roll call vote, please.
Tammy Blank,
Aye.
Cinda Brode,
Aye.
Julia Tamarki Kukuro,
Aye.
Tom Harley,
Aye.
Mr. Kerr,
Aye.
Mrs. Leeper, Mrs. Lowry,
Aye.
Mr. Schroth,
Walter.
An aye for me.
Barb Barker,
Aye.
I said aye.
motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Motion passes. Mike, was there an addendum that we needed to cover tonight on the agenda?
There is, sir. If you allow, Jared can read the addendum, read what that motion is, have discussion on that, sir, if that's okay.
Yes, Mr. O'Neill's going to pull it up on the screen so the board and the public can see it. The motion would just be coming under the Policy and Personnel Committee, and it reads that the board approves the one-time early retirement incentive for any qualifying AFSCME employee covered under the collective bargaining agreement as submitted. And it was something that we discussed. We are still working out the final details, the final wording. So the board knows the details, and I can certainly cover that if the board so wishes at this time.
Are you making that motion? No.
Jared, I think you. Well, actually, it belongs to Uta. Would you like to make the motion, Uta? And then
Sure.
after the motion's been made, seconded, I'll ask Mike to or Jared to give us the public a brief explanation of the details involved here.
Sure. I move that the board approve the one-time early retirement incentive for any qualifying AFSCME employee covered under the collective bargaining agreement as submitted.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mike or Jared, would you like to add anything for the public's benefit as to what's going on here, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go first, and then Jared can follow that. I think when you look at the pandemic and what we're doing here, the COVID-19 has had financial impacts, and we're looking at all those impacts that are having on the district and our budget. And we have determined that there are ways we can maximize our resources while maintaining services and meeting the needs of our buildings and our families. What this does is this incentive allows us to free up some opportunity for those people to leave and retire early, give them incentive to do so, while giving us greater flexibility as far as possibly discontinuing position or repurposing people to become a little bit more efficient on our end. When you look at the impact of the deficit, we have to make smart, sound, strategic decisions, and this is part of that process and of those options, what we just spoke about a little bit ago. What we're looking at doing here, again, is a one-time incentive, retirement incentive for ASME workers, where it'll be $8,000 per worker, and we're going to give them a window in which they have to make a decision. And what that'll do is determine what our next steps are. So our goal here is to be considerate, compassionate, and flexible as we can to all. And this allows people who are nearing their retirement to maybe have extra incentive to leave earlier, and then frees up us with some financial flexibility that we're seeking. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it's part of our overall strategy to reduce expenditures, with all the while keeping in the mindset and the framework of being fair, compassionate, and flexible to the best of our ability. And I recommend that the board approves this addendum. Jared, anything you'd like to add?
The only thing I'd like to add is it will be offered to all AFSCME employees, but the one stipulation is that they have to have at least 10 years in the district, and the retirements would be effective no later than June 30th. And we need to just kind of work out the details of the deadline we are looking for those retirement notices by the employees. We're going to have a conversation with AFSCME as to make sure we're both in agreement as to when we want that deadline for.
As it's an addendum, Mr. President, I'll defer to you, and we can take some public comment or see if there's any questions about the retirement incentive that we can address.
Okay, at this point in time, if there's any public comment on this particular motion, we'll take it at this point in time. Thank you. Okay, it does not appear that there's any public comment at this point in time. Are there any questions or comments or further discussion on this? Okay, at this point in time, if there's no other questions or comments by the board, we'll call for a chat room vote by the board. Please, board, at this time, indicate your pleasure in the chat room. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have enough votes to pass the motion. At this point in time, that brings us down to the closing of the meeting. There are no discussion items tonight. Are there any public comment on agenda items at this point? Okay, no other comments. We did have some enclosures. We had an executive session on Tuesday, May 5th to discuss personnel items. We also had one this evening prior to the meeting to discuss legislation items. Our next regular board meeting will be June the 8th. There will not be a special meeting in May. Our next committee meetings are Buildings and Grounds on May 18th, Academic on June 1st, and Policy and Personnel on June the 8th at 5:30. That concludes our agenda for this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Well, I guess
Aye.
we'll do that again in the negative. Anybody objecting to? Okay, okay. Before I declare us adjourned, I see, Mike, where Chauncey may have had a few questions. Will you handle that?
Yes, sir. Myself, Jared, my admin team will stay online, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
We stand adjourned.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.